Good morning. We go straight to a Fox Weather alert, a desperate search for survivors in Mississippi this morning after multiple tornadoes leave at least 14 people dead. One monster twister believed to be a mile wide, carving a path of destruction that stretches over 100 miles.
The small town of Rolling Fork was hit first. Just before 9 p.m., the tornado flattening homes, toppling power lines, downing trees as it swept through several communities. Storm chasers say it sparked multiple explosions. A second twister touching down in the city of Amarie, where the damage there is apparently extensive. This map shows just how many Mississippi Delta communities were hit.
Yeah, there's the path right there. The powerful system also triggering flood warnings for millions. And this morning, more than 100,000 people at least are without power. Let's go straight to Chief Meteorologist Rick Reichmuth, who's tracking the storm. Rick.
Yeah, so all of this happened after sunset last night, and we still haven't had any sun yet. So, we've got about 2 more hours until sun rises in Rolling Fork. We're going to get a lot of images coming up there, but it's been a long and really scary night dealing with all of this, with the power out and then without any sunrise. All the search and rescue operations certainly very difficult. This is a look at that line of storms that moved through the first town that was hit by this tornado, likely the same tornado that stayed on the ground all the way through here. But the first point was just after 9 o'clock in Rolling Fork, and then it stayed on the ground and hit a number of communities, likely around 80 to 100 miles long in that path. Today, they'll be out there surveying it to get an exact sense of if this tornado was on the ground the entire time, to see exactly how wide it was, at what points and such. But at the immediate, it's about search and rescue efforts. You can get an idea of this cell moving through. Today, I will tell you the energy is much lower, so less of a threat of severe weather today. That will help, certainly, all these people without power. Today, you've got good weather behind this storm. The severe weather moves a little bit farther off towards the east, more of a rainy day. Tomorrow, a bigger threat for severe weather across parts of the south. And we've been in a really active severe weather pattern this year, guys. Normally, severe weather season really peaks up in April and May. This year, we've had well above average activity so far, and we have another threat coming, probably a significant threat this coming week.
Was there a lot of warning before this?
This was a really well advertised event. We knew that yesterday was going to be a really active event. That said, the tornado warned storm in Rolling Fork had about 6 minutes of warning from when they first, but it was the beginning of this cell really rotating, about 6 minutes between the time that it was warned and it hit that town. I will tell you, the cell was also moving at about 65 miles an hour. So imagine the wind of a tornado, but the forward motion of that tornado at about the speed you would do on an interstate. So it moving so fast, it gives very little time for people to react.
And Rick, a mile wide, how common is that?
I mean, it happens, and certainly this is the area where you see this happening. It's one of the big ones. You get these big ones that can be a mile, mile and a half wide. When it happens, this is the kind of destruction that you often see with it. You like when tornadoes happen, sometimes you get those EF1s that are just drop down for a little bit of time. But a mile wide can happen, certainly can, and this looks to be one of those.
There's some early images there from last night in Rolling Fork, Mississippi, of what kind of damage we have begun to see. Let's bring in Jose Watson. He's a Mississippi Highway Patrol trooper. We're happy to have him with us this morning. Jose, thank you for your time. As you just mentioned, this hit just around 9 p.m. last night in the darkness. Have you, in the Mississippi Highway Patrol, yet been able to survey the damage?
Well, we haven't had any daylight just yet. We stayed out last night until about 1 o'clock this morning, our time. We called off everything at that time to try to make as many assessments as we possibly could. We did a lot of search and rescue, and we was waiting on the sunlight to come up to give us a better scheme of, a better light so that we can get out there and get back at it and try to find if there's any other signs of life in the rumble out there in the morning.
Jose, the structures, I mean, I know it's a wide swath of area, but is this an area that expects a lot of tornadoes and therefore the homes are prepared for it? Or what kind of wreckage are we looking at here?
Well, I mean, just say this is Mississippi, and it's the Mississippi Delta, so it's flatland. Anytime we have weather like this come in, you always expect the worst. We plan for it. The housing in the area are not equipped or can withstand winds. A lot of the areas are wooden homes or trailer houses. Have some brick structures in the area, but they're not able to withstand the tough wind that we had on the tornadoes of last night.
Jose, you posted on Facebook last night right away saying, hey, don't come here. If you're thinking of getting on the road and coming here, don't do it because the roads aren't passable yet. At this point, after we're, say, 9 hours into this, are the roads clear so that you can get in the people that you need for search and rescue efforts?
Your main highways, your main thoroughfares in the area are clear, except for maybe one highway, 149, which is still impassable completely due to power lines down, trees are down. You have a lot of power line poles that are still down even as we speak. Crews were out last night. There are still some crews are out this morning. Some are still en route to us here in Rolling Fork and Silver City and across the Delta to get these. I'm in there broadcasting to you this morning because we don't have power here. And we're trying to, that's why it's so important for us to have the sunlight first thing in the morning so that we can continue our search and rescue efforts.
Well, Jose, we'll be thinking about you today. Best of luck. It's going to be a very rough couple hours, I think, for people. The emotional toll when you see the sun come up at that first time and you get a view of what this is for people, it is. Every time I see it, it is so devastating for people. So you have a lot of work to do and a lot of emotional work to do throughout the day for the people of your community. So best of luck to you with that.
Thank you so much.
I'll tell you what, go to Fox Weather. Download your Fox Weather app. If you haven't, I will tell you, Fox Weather is doing such an amazing job. You can stream live weather broadcasting, and they are covering this story like nobody is. And we have reporters on the field there watching this. So download the Fox Weather app. You can also get on any of your connected TV devices. Doing an amazing job there.
That's important for the residents, but also there's so many Americans that volunteer in these situations, so they need to know what's going on as well.
Thank you, Rick.
Right. All right, Rick. Talk to you later in the morning. Appreciate it. All right, we move on now to another Fox News alert. More U.S. forces hurt in another attack by Iranian-backed forces on a U.S. base in eastern Syria.
The missile attack coming after President Biden ordered retaliatory strikes after an Iranian-made kamikaze drone killed a U.S. contractor and injured 5 U.S. service members Thursday.
Alexandria Hoff is live in Washington with the latest. Alexandria, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, the number of additional U.S. forces that were injured yesterday has not been disclosed at this time, but a senior U.S. official tells Fox News that some of those injuries may be serious. That official added that this was caused by a rocket attack and another attack involving multiple Iranian drones on 2 U.S. bases. This came just hours after President Biden had ordered the U.S. Central Command to carry out precision strikes on groups affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary National Guard Corps for a suspected Iranian drone strike that killed 1 U.S. contractor and injured 5 service members, killed a U.S. contractor, as we know, injured 5 service members and an additional contractor as well. Here's what the president said yesterday.
To make no mistake, the United States does not emphasize seek conflict with Iran, but be prepared for us to act forcefully, protect our people.
And Fox News has also learned that at the time when Thursday's deadly attack was carried out, the main air defense system at the coalition military base was not working.
Why wasn't there a contingency to shoot down the drone if it was coming into the base?
Again, look, we take a variety of measures to safeguard our people, but again, it's an inherently dangerous place, and again, we'll look into the details of the actual attack.
The Pentagon is still assessing how to respond to the latest pro-Iranian forces attacks, but the pro-Iranian forces did state this, saying we have the capability to respond if our centers and forces in Syria are targeted. And this is not the first time that Iranian forces, proxy groups have targeted U.S. bases. According to CENTCOM, that has happened 78 times since January of 2021. Guys.
All right, thank you, Alexander.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as you just heard her mention, 78 attacks against U.S. forces by Iranian forces under the Biden administration. It's a staggering number. Thankfully, often they haven't taken an American life. In this case, they did. So let's break it down just a little bit, what's happening in that region in Syria. So we first learned of that. It's a kamikaze drone, a drone that Iran is using a lot in Ukraine. They're supplying the Russians in Ukraine these kamikaze drones. They're one-way flights meant to destroy things and kill individuals. In this particular region, it's in eastern Syria. So this is on Thursday where the initial attack happened that killed 1 American contractor and injured 5 troops as well. There was an American retaliation, which was 2 separate missile strikes, which were also in eastern Syria. Deir ez-Zor and a bombing at I don't know how to pronounce it, Mayadeen. This all happened near the Al Omar oil field, which is the largest oil field in Syria. Our biggest base in Syria is near the largest oil field in Syria, which is interesting to note. So after we retaliated and killed up to 9 Iranian, and these are Iranian Guard Corps. These are their exporting terrorist organization that the regime uses to try to destabilize other countries and take on Americans. So it's a specialized force that is in Syria. They then shot at us again with 10 rockets fired at our main base in Syria. There are reports of injuries. We don't know how many. And guys, just a reminder of this neighborhood. I mean, you got Israel right here. You got Iraq, where we took out the ISIS caliphate, but a lot of them moved into Syria. Syria is destabilized. Bashar al-Assad, who's been fighting a civil war. And then you've got Iran right here. Now, we're there. The Pentagon says our 900 troops are there to fight ISIS, to make sure ISIS doesn't come back. Well, ISIS and Iran are definitely not friends. ISIS is a Sunni militant group. Iran is a Shia militant group. They're not friends. But Iran sees this as an opportunity to attack Americans. If Americans are in the region, death to America, Iran's going to find a way to attack them with kamikaze drones and missiles. And of note here, this base right here, and I don't know how large that base is. We'll try to get more information on that. But their air defense assets were not operable at that moment, meaning the ability to shoot down a kamikaze drone didn't exist, or it did exist and it wasn't working. The question is, did the Iranians happen to know that, or was it fortuitous from their perspective?
So they had 900. First of all, I think a lot of Americans are waking up and going, oh, I didn't know we had 900 troops in Syria. So we have 900 troops in Syria. We put our young men and women in danger, and we don't have an air defense field to protect them, or it's down. Or maybe the Iranians have figured out that it's down, and so they're doing that. That's troubling. 78 attacks.
Yeah.
And
I mean, these are direct attacks. This is
right.
This is not a proxy war situation here. Mm-hmm. This is American troops and Iranian forces, right? I mean, these are direct attacks, to your point.
Right. And can you explain one thing? So the Iranians are, trying to attack Americans, as you said, here in Syria, but we're trying to, as General Tata says, lick their boots to get them to the negotiating table on the Iranian deal.
Yeah, through the Russians.
I'm so confused.
Through the Russians.
Yeah, and the Russians, who we are fighting in Ukraine, are the negotiators in this.
And Iran is supplying Russia with the same kamikaze drones.
Wow.
I wanted to follow up on what you said about these are direct attacks. Tell me about the Iranian Guard Corps. Are these Iranian soldiers? Are they Iranian affiliated, Iranian supported, Iranian funded? How obviously direct are these combatants?
They're expeditionary forces, so they're meant to deploy forward. So they'll move into Syria, or they'll move into Lebanon when they helped to take over Lebanon, or move into Iraq when they were attempting to destabilize there, and try to target opponents of Iran or foment instability in those areas to advance the interests of Iran. It's
not Syrians under contract of the Iranians. These are Iranian forces who have deployed to do this.
Iranian forces who have deployed and found local allies on the ground willing to work with them. In this case, we're working with Kurdish forces in Syria, who we were working with in the north. They're allying with other tribes that are more friendly to Iran.
John Ratcliffe, by the way, Pete and Will, says that this is all happening because Joe Biden has projected weakness. Listen.
I appreciate the fact that the Biden administration responded to the Iranian attacks, at least this time, unlike Afghanistan, where the response was to accidentally kill a van full of 10 Afghan kids. This time, they hit their target, but they didn't send the response that Secretary Austin believed that they would, because as you pointed out, Pete, within hours, Iran fired off 7 more rockets and more injuries to U.S. forces. Compare the same situation 3 years ago when a U.S. contractor was killed. A proportionate response, sending the right message, was we decided to take out the head of the Iranian terror network, the Iranian Quds Force General Qasem Soleimani. And the message was clear. Today it's Soleimani. Tomorrow it's Supreme Leader Khamenei.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Under the Trump administration, it was, we're going to drop a bomb on Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, their biggest dude, which sent shockwaves throughout Iran and put them on their heels. Now we're getting this tit for tat, which feels like it could escalate in really, really bad ways. And you've got dead American. You have a dead American and potentially severely wounded Americans as well. on bases that may or may not have missile defense. I don't know exactly how many bases we have. I don't think that's a public knowledge how big they are, and how capable.
Have we
the forces
been in
are
a
they're
proxy
working.
war here? I mean, I know we're supposedly fighting ISIS, which, by the way, has been reconstituted since Biden has been in office. There's been a lot of congressmen warning us about that. But is this a war that we exist? What is going on in Syria?
This is kind of a typical aspect of the post 9/11 counterterrorism approach that is going to be more likely post big land wars, right? So we fought these big land wars thinking we were going to change these countries and create havens for democracy. That didn't work.
Yeah.
So now it's smaller footprint with special operators and drones and others to try to take out terror cells. And
is it to
project
take
forward.
out terror cells, or is it to take out Assad? What is there anything else that?
It's not to take out Assad at this point.
Okay.
The Pentagon's line is this is to prevent ISIS. It's kind of a back burner approach, but we'll see.
One thing that is clear, whether or not we're talking about kinetic action or even diplomacy, the world responds not to weakness but to strength.
Yeah.
Sure.
And citizens of our country, I think, are always skeptical because we've been lied to so much in past wars. So we see things like this and we just don't know what to think. Anyway, all right, well, we're starting headlines with a Fox News alert. At least 2 people are dead, 8 are injured, and 9 are missing after an explosion at a chocolate factory in Pennsylvania last night. The blast happening at R.M. Palmer, a historic factory about an hour outside of Philadelphia. Officials warning residents to avoid the area around the factory until further notice. There is no official word on what caused that explosion. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is sending a surge of state troopers to Miami Beach after 2 people were killed in a pair of shootings last weekend. Florida Highway Patrol saying the increased staff will help watch the streets and keep order to help curb illegal behavior. The increased law enforcement also comes as South Florida copes with unruly spring breakers and increased warnings about fentanyl-laced party drugs. Now to March Madness. The Elite Eight is set after a wild finish to the Sweet 16. San Diego State sends number 1 seed Alabama packing, ending the Crimson Tide's title hopes. Aztecs win 71-64. The number 1 seed Houston Cougars, no match for the Hurricanes. Miami pulls off the convincing 89-75 victory. The Canes and head coach Jim Larranaga just keep on dancing, literally. He's pretty good. And Creighton ends Princeton's Cinderella run. So sorry, Pete. Beating the 15th seed Tigers 86-75. And those are your headlines.
What in the world?
That is, I'm
There's
going to say
4
pretty
games,
egregious.
and we reported on 3.
Pretty egregious, Rachel, because the one game we omitted was Will's team.
The Texas Longhorns, it's not your fault that I stayed up until 12:30 last night.
I just want you to know that when I read sports, it's like reading Chinese in phonetics. I have no idea what you're talking about. I just read it. I have no idea
You did well.
what just happened.
Congratulations
Sorry about
to the Longhorns.
I just heard Princeton, and I heard lose.
They
loser.
played tough, but
yeah, okay.
Creighton was the better team.
Okay.
All right, well, Fox News alert, Texas won. Here's another Fox News alert. 2 migrants killed yesterday, at least, and 10 hospitalized after suffocating in a train car traveling near the U.S.-Mexico border underground railroad, aiming to rescue children from sex trafficking and exploitation. And he joins us now. Tim, thanks for being with us this morning. Pretty tragic circumstances here. Apparently a 911 call or a call to Border Patrol was made from inside this train car where they were able to pull 10 people out, but 2 had already passed away. In your estimation, how common, first of all, the tragedy is one thing, but the mode of transportation is another. How common is something like what we just witnessed?
Unfortunately, more common now than it used to be, because really we have horrific border policies. We have policies that invite smugglers and human traffickers to take advantage of the fact that really there's very little enforcement going on. We used to have strong border security. We had, and this would deter things like this from happening, because you have trained operators, trained law enforcement officials on that line watching for these things, preventing these things. But unfortunately, we're going to continue to see this so long as we have very open border policies.
Yeah, and Tim, just as a follow-up, I mean, you hear a story like this and you think there's no mode of transportation or no avenue that isn't being exploited by human smugglers. I mean, trucking, train traffic, obviously foot traffic as well.
Correct. I mean, I've been in the tunnels. I spent 10 years on that border as a special agent, undercover operator, fighting human trafficking. I mean, I've been inside tunnels even that they build, right under the border to get people through and drugs through and so forth. So yeah, they'll do anything to exploit it. Again, now more than ever, because we're allowing it to happen.
And it's March, by the way. Imagine this in August in a train car. Let's get to this as well, though, because the other side of this is that 10 people were saved in this train car by Border Patrol. And that's reflected as well in this story, where a Border Patrol agent saved a baby, a Guatemalan baby who'd been abandoned along the Colorado River. You can see a picture here of that. I believe that's someone crossing it. That's the Border Patrol agent, I think, finding the baby right there.
That's someone leaving him.
Oh, that's someone leaving the baby.
That's the smuggler band, and there's the Border Patrol.
Rachel sitting right next to me watching as well. Yeah, and then the Border Patrol agent, I think we have a picture of them hugging the 1-year-old Guatemalan baby. What's your reaction to this, Tim?
I work with law enforcement for years. I still do. And these men and women are heroic. And they are trained, unlike, what kind of the left would want you to think about these law enforcement officers. Just the opposite is true. They are trained to assist and help and rescue and save lives. What you're seeing there is who we are as Americans, and it's who our law enforcement, who our Border Patrol officials actually are.
We'll just... To the eternal shame of an administration that would attempt to paint the Border Patrol as those who would whip someone with, I guess, horse reins. And let's put it into context, because, again, these stories are anecdotal, but they're representative of a larger problem. 57,000 unaccompanied minors right there rescued or left coming across our border. And this is what you see, not someone whipping someone with reins, Tim.
Right, and we know that photo is completely out of context, and it's tragic that that's who the administration is, that they would reflect something that's false. But to your point, all these unaccompanied minors, we need to understand something else, something we don't talk about very much, and that is the fact that the United States is the #1 demand for child exploitation material, meaning we are one of the top countries for destination for sex trafficking. So when you see these children being brought across, they are being brought into our sex markets, our trafficking markets. And so these heroes are rescuing children, not just from death or danger, but from American pedophiles who are waiting to exploit them.
It's terrible, terrible.
So sad.
Tim Ballard, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we have a Fox News alert. More attacks on U.S. bases in Syria after America fires back, striking Iranian-backed groups. We'll speak with a former State Department official on the delayed White House response and what it should look like next.
We're back with a Fox News alert. Officials revealing U.S. air defense was not fully operational before an Iranian airstrike that killed an American contractor in Syria on Thursday. Let's take a look at what has happened so far. Joining us now with reaction is former State Department Deputy Special Envoy under President Trump, who came to the U.S. as an Iranian refugee, Eli Kohanim. Eli, thank you so much for being here. So we broke it down a little bit earlier in this hour. There was a strike against U.S. forces in eastern Syria. Unfortunately, a contractor was killed. U.S. troops were killed. We strike back with two different strikes in the region. They strike back again. So And unfortunately, this loss of American life is significant for all of us. What's Iran's goal, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, in these attacks?
Pete, it's great to be with you this morning. And Iran has two goals. The first is they'd love to push the United States out of the Middle East so that they have a completely free hand to continue their nefarious activities and destabilize the region. At the same time, we see them moving forward with their nuclear activities. And so just this week, General Mark Milley testified to the U.S. Congress that Iran is, quote, dangerously close to completing a nuclear bomb. Now, all this, Pete, is happening under Joe Biden's watch. And what I would tell you is that Joe Biden's weakness has invited this aggression. This is the 78th time that the IRGC is carrying out these kinds of attacks against U.S. troops on Syrian soil. And
were there 78 attacks like this under the Trump administration, or is this something that's been a signature of what they think they can get away with now?
This is absolutely under Joe Biden's watch. These attacks started in 2021 when he came into office. And let's remember, President Trump eliminated Iran's top terrorist, Qasem Soleimani. So under the Trump administration, we had regional superpower status. We had global superpower status. President Trump let the world know that you can't mess with the United States of America. And unfortunately, Joe Biden is signaling only weakness. And as a result, we've had the loss of U.S. American life.
And, you know, the U.S. troops that are here are, we're told, the Pentagon says, they're to fight ISIS. Now, ISIS is no friend of Iran. So how does that dynamic at play? Because this location here, Israel, is of great strategic significance to Iran, who'd like to wipe them off the map, just like they had to wipe us off the map. Is ISIS much of a factor to them, or is it really about us?
This is absolutely about America. Remember, they consider the United States the great Satan, and they chant death to America all the time. So, again, the Iranians are understanding that we are weak under Joe Biden, and they think this is a good moment to come after U.S. forces. Now, like you said, Pete, our allies in the region are suffering as well for Joe Biden's weakness. Israel right now has told the United States that they consider Iran an existential threat, and so they're looking for U.S. support as they are battling the Islamic Republic of Iran seemingly on their own. And just last week, we saw the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a historic U.S. ally, go into the open arms of China. China brokered this agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And so all of this is happening because Joe Biden is signaling to the world that he's a weak leader, and the U.S. is not the global superpower we were just under the Trump administration.
You are really bad at your job if you're driving Saudi Arabia and Iran together, two historic enemies of about 1,300 years. Ellie, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Pete.
I appreciate it. All right, coming up, a deadly outbreak of a drug-resistant bacteria linked to eye drops is sweeping the country, infecting nearly 70 people across 16 states. An optometrist explains what's going on with that. Plus, Universal School. We're back with a Fox News alert. Officials revealing U.S. air defense was not fully operational before an Iranian airstrike that killed an American contractor in Syria on Thursday. Let's take a look at what has happened so far. Joining us now with reaction is former State Department Deputy Special Envoy under President Trump, who came to the U.S. as an Iranian refugee, Elie Kohanim. Ellie, thank you so much for being here. So we broke it down a little bit earlier in this hour. There was a strike against U.S. forces in eastern Syria. Unfortunately, a contractor was killed. U.S. troops were killed. We strike back with two different strikes in the region. They strike back again. So and unfortunately, you know, this loss of American life is significant for all of us. What's Iran's goal, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, in these attacks?
Pete, it's great to be with you this morning. And Iran has two goals. The first is they'd love to push the United States out of the Middle East so that they have a completely free hand to continue their nefarious activities and destabilize the region. At the same time, we see them moving forward with their nuclear activities. And so just this week, General Mark Milley testified to the U.S. Congress that Iran is, quote, dangerously close to completing a nuclear bomb. Now, all this, Pete, is happening under